Hi, welcome to First to Third. My name is Adam, and I'm here tonight with the event team of Kickball365. I've got Brick in the red, I've got Jimmy in the blue, and I've got Tim supporting a veteran jersey panic attack. We appreciate you guys jumping on tonight late. If you're watching this live, Eastern Standard Time, it's 10:30. Those on the West Coast, we hope you have a chance to watch us. Tonight's podcast is going to be very quick and simple. We're focusing on two quick updates that we are going to be making to the changes for 2018. Based on phenomenal feedback throughout the last week and a half. Folks have been emailing us, posting to Facebook. The rules committee has been discussing it. And then ultimately tonight, the event team leadership decided that there's going to be two changes that we make to the blog post that most of you have read. Number one, out-of-region 5-player cap. A lot of people have been referring it to the OOR cap. The change is the following. Circuit teams that currently have out-of-region players, grandfather players previously approved by the rules committee, on their roster are going to be limited to bringing a max of 5 out-of-region players to any given circuit event. Note, there are no limit on the total number of those out-of-region teams that you can have throughout the year. So you can bring 5 this week, you can bring 5 the next week for your out-of-region players. There's a new key discrepancy or change. That is that if you have a new player, they are exempt from this rule. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So note, this rule does not imply that teams can simply pick up 5 out-of-region players on their 2018 roster. The rule is for those teams who have currently out-of-region players on their roster. Tim, you want to add anything to that? Good to go. The second change from the blog post that was posted is in regards to availables teams. The change that that we're making tonight, and again, this will be posted publicly probably within the next 15 minutes, is players competing on availables teams will have the following guidelines to adhere to. Now, this is a change from the original player cap. For co-ed division availables teams, you will be not permitted to have more than 4 male players from the top 15 teams listed on the official co-ed division team rankings. What that means is anybody who's created an availables team for West Palm Beach or for Arizona or Jacksonville or Tampa or whatever circuit event we host this year, you are not permitted to have more than 4 players who are from the top 15 at the time we do the calculations, which is based on 8 weeks prior to the event. And I'll let Tim explain that in a second as far as the snapshot and the date you should consider. So for co-ed, the change is now a max of 4 male players. Previously, there was a cap of 5. We heard a lot of feedback, a lot of strong opinions. We took that in consideration, and we've changed it now to be 4 male players. There is no cap for women from the top teams whatsoever on the availables teams. On the women's division, availables teams will not be permitted to have more than 5 players from the top 10. Previously, that was 15. Now it's 10 based on the numbers, again, feedback. This policy does not apply to non-playing coaches. So again, for availables teaming planning purposes, roster calculations, basically the pool of players you should pick from, is done about 8 weeks prior to the event. So any thoughts from Tim or the team on the call?
I think that's a great change. I know I was in favor of that. It's good to see that there are a lot of feedback out there regarding the new players, and I think recruiting new players, bringing in new blood. The regionalization rule is actually a good thing, and it's good to see that they made the change to allow that and not penalize it. So I think it's great feedback that everybody made, and I'm happy with the change that we as a company made in regards to that.
Appreciate that, Brick. Jimmy or Tim? All right. So again, the third thing I'll point out is just new player exemption. Again, if you're a new player, we define a new player as a player who's been to 2 events or less on availables teams. If you're a new player, you will be exempt from the out-of-region cap. Again, that is a change, and we're going to make our own changes on the PET tool, the player eligibility tool, to actually show and classify those players that are considered new players. So we're going to be working with our developer, Tom, here in the next couple weeks, hopefully not too much into the holidays, to make that change so our captains and players and folks who are utilizing the player tool, PET tool, can see those changes. So we took a pulse. We went out to Facebook. We said, all right, here's 15 questions. We'd like you to vote which are the ones you'd like us to address. We want to make sure that even though we're putting these things out there as far as PDFs and documents and policy changes and rules, black and white text can be interpreted one way or the other. So we felt that let's get out there and answer as many of these questions as we can. And we're going to make a commitment to do so in the next couple of weeks to make sure we address any confusion or any concerns or any changes to the rule book or policies that need to be addressed through an open venue. We're also going to commit as the company to host a couple more podcasts than we have in the past. Our community does a phenomenal job. I love watching the podcast from everybody. But at the same time, the original First to Third may make a reappearance or at least some version of a podcast here in 2018. That said, here are 15 of the questions, give or take, that a lot of people voted for that we're going to run through. Number one, is there a chance that the new available rules will be modified in 2018? Tim, you have a response.
Yeah, so the answer is slightly. After discussions, even initial discussions before our changes were announced, discussions since then with the Rules Committee, on the co-ed side, it's still gonna be a cap of 5, so that's not changing. But we're gonna give in and have a little co-ed male cap of 4. So for all the females out there that were expressing that they don't have a team to play for, they would get boxed out some way, basically limiting the co-ed male cap of 4. On the women's side, the only change is we're going to limit it to the top 10 teams instead of top 15. So that'll be one time where we have co-ed and women's side separate, or something slightly different.
Awesome. Great. Jim or Brick? All right, number 2. When do you think you're going to have a full schedule with locked-in dates?
So that's a fun one. Almost 100 people wanted that one. In the past, the short answer is we're working. I'm definitely trying to work every day for the 5 or 6 dates we don't have a date for. I'm working almost daily to try to solidify that. This year, we started a policy and we're going to keep it going forward where we're just going to kind of give monthly estimates. So, for example, Arizona in March, Houston in April. We're going to announce a date once we have it, because what we found in the past, especially trying to work with parks departments that may only give out permits, 2, 3, 4 months in advance, trying to get a permit 8, 9, 10 months in advance can be a nightmare. And we just don't want people buying flights for a date that later has to change. We have that every year, and so we're trying to avoid that this year by just keeping it as a blank month. We have our target dates in mind internally, so we have some guidance, but we do like to keep it open right now.
Yeah, that's a hell of a good point. Brick, you got something?
No, I was just going to mention, Tim, something you may want to let people know about this year that's different from years past, where we actually do have an event team that is kind of spearheading most of these tournaments. So it's broken out kind of in that fashion. Do you want to kind of explain the structure behind that? Am I on mute still?
No.
No, you're good.
I missed that. So what do you mean? Just by how we kind of like to?
Yeah, I was just saying.
We're all tackling for these permits?
Yeah, I mean, in years past, there's been anywhere from 7 to 10 event managers. This year, we've kind of consolidated everything to the event team, where we've got 4 to 5 dedicated event managers handling events across the country to kind of spearhead and kind of focus in certain areas that they're, regionally based in. So that's one reason why we haven't gotten all the dates out there yet, but also we'll build towards getting everything solidified here in the next couple months.
Yeah, and right now, basically any resource not focused on supporting the very next or upcoming 1 or 2 events dedicated on solidifying those remaining unknown dates. And for some of those that are up in flux right now, off the top of my head, like Chicago, Portland, Los Angeles, some of those will have a better answer. Hopefully, we'll have dates hopefully in January. But a lot of parks and recs departments, especially this time of year, do shut down. So we're kind of at a weird time of year where we try to announce dates and we can't get answers ourselves. So we'll hopefully have more information in January. But
and we'll make I was just going to add, we'll make a promise. We're not going to sit on a date. Just like West Palm, the moment we get a date confirmed, either through a contract or the permit holder who has the rights to provide us with a permit, blatantly stating that you have this date on this specific time at this park. Trust me when I say that Tim is working to get that event page launched as quickly as possible. So good question. All right, the next one. Can teams retire or dissolve? Can teams that retire or dissolve be removed at a faster rate than 1 calendar year? Of course, that's assuming that they have proof that they're not going to play in CCC. This has come up in the past a lot. What do you have a response for, Tim?
So unfortunately, that answer is no. And it does go back to that past. We don't want to repeat what we've seen previously. In the past, we've seen teams, retire and then just come back, a year or two later. Meanwhile, all their good players that decided not to retire, go on to stack other teams. We just found it the easiest way. It can be a headache with some players, but we just found this is the easiest way to classify our teams. That way, usually after 1 year, that's when teams are really actually done. There's very little chance that they'll come back.
Very good. All right, next question. What is the end goal for rosters? So the circuit introduced regionalization. We've stated publicly that this can be changed at any point. This year we came in with a cap of 5 out-of-region players. So what's the vision 3 to 5 years from now? What do we want the rosters to look like? Now, this has been a really good question, and a lot of folks have been debating it, but you've got a great response for us.
Yeah, so ideally, kind of the first iteration of this last year, some of those remember early November, that's kind of what the long-term vision was. At that time, that was just let's rip the Band-Aid off and go with it. That vision, for those who don't know, it was every team was located in a city and had a geographical area of about 75 miles in any direction that they could recruit from, plus have 3 out-of-region players. That's it. Ultimately, after some backlash, we came up with what is the current model, but ultimately the goal is to tweak it to get to that point. Some point where regions could be a little bit smaller. So instead of encompassing like multiple states, it could be down to 1 state, or it could be down to a larger geographical like metro area. Likewise, it could be further reduced. Instead of having, let's say, 5 out-of-region players, maybe down to 3 out-of-region players, something of that nature. But no major modifications, just slight tweaks annually to the current model.
And I think it's fair to say a lot of folks kind of that were not around pre-regionalization, or even, why does the circuit take this approach for regionalization? And I think can be summed up in one simple sentence. We want to avoid seeing the national consolidation we saw. It was a trend where a lot of teams were folding due to their best charger, their best pitcher, their best first baseman, or whatever the case, that a core crew of a team would decide to up and move to another team in another part of the country, and nullifying and basically acting as a detriment for all kickball growth in a particular region. We saw that trend continuing and felt that if we don't put in place a regionalization model, it would set us up for failure to basically living with 20 to 30 of the best teams, which is great, but it would not be true to what we're trying to build, which is a professional league behind adult kickball. We want this to be something that is attractive to media companies. We want this to be attractive where teams have value in what they've built over the years. And preferably, we'd like that to be built from people around them. We do obviously recognize that we did not start this way. That's where there's grandfather rules in place and new player exceptions to make sure that we don't hamstring teams to recruit nationally. But we're looking for the betterment of the company. We're looking for the betterment of the league. And we appreciate, as always, any and all feedback. And the rules committee and the staff and the event team in front of you here will definitely take that in consideration moving forward. Jimmy, Brick?
Yeah, I mean, there's other benefits to having regionally based teams as well. When we talk about trying to like this past year, we shrunk down the number of events we were holding because we're hoping for greater participation at each individual event. And so it's easier to kind of map that out with, more regionally centralized teams rather than teams spread out nationally or, up and down an entire coast. So, with, like, for example, it's easier to kind of map out what kind of participation we'll get at a Florida event when, we have, a dozen or so teams that are based out of Florida rather than, half teams in Florida and we're not sure if they'll make a team because the other half may not come down, things like that. So.
Very cool. Next question. Can women from the top 15 teams be counted separately from men for co-ed availables teams so that they can still play? This has been a little confusing point. I think, Tim, you have a good quick answer for us.
Yeah, that's basically answered from our change of modifying the cap to no more than 4 males from the top 15 teams on the co-ed side. So there still is some wiggle room. I like letting teams do build how they want to build. So we'll see how it plays out. But there are a lot of great women kickball players on the co-ed side, especially in the top 15. I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to say that they're not going to have a home because there are plenty of teams at a tournament, availables teams, that carry 0, 1, or sometimes even as many as 2, top 15 players. A lot of teams are in that 0 to 1 bucket. So there's always a home somewhere.
All right. Is there discussion about players who have always been on the same team and they move away, not counting towards the 5 out-of-region event rule?
So the answer to this is basically that's why there is a out-of-region cap of 5, is to account for players that fall under this exact situation. Majority of teams out there, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's over 80%, don't even have 5 out-of-region spots on their roster that could be taken up by these types of players. So there is room, and there's definitely, we definitely want to account for that because you don't want to tell somebody that, sorry, you don't have a spot on this team because you moved away, even though you've been with the team for 5 years. So that's what the out-of-region cap of 5 is meant to account, is players that fall in this exact situation.
All right. Okay, next question. Why do players have to sit out a full calendar year in some instances before transferring to a new team in their region?
So there's some confusion with this. Players don't have to sit out. Sitting out only applies when your team dissolves, you want to transfer upward, and a request gets denied. So that's basically it. Players have other options within region. It may not be as attractive, but you do have options. This is always most notably there was one group last year that got denied right away at the beginning of the year. But they essentially, the way it worked out was they wanted to join a top team. I think the team was ranked 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that in the nation. They wanted to transfer. That intention basically killed their old team. And that was verified when we emailed all the players on the old team, who some didn't even know about their intention to transfer. So they ended up having to sit out an entire year, not play with any other established teams. They didn't want to go to any of the other teams in region. So that's the only far circumstance where somebody is going to sit out. But otherwise, there are plenty of options, with other teams within region. So you don't have to sit out to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. A lot of folks have kind of thought they can get away with just saying, hey, my team's going to dissolve. I'd like to go to team X or Y. If you are officially telling the company that your team plans to resolve and you plan to join to another team, we're going to do our homework and assess the situation with the other players involved. In some cases, we have found that other players on the team were not notified of a team closing or dissolving. So if you're a team captain considering to notify us, please make sure that you've engaged with every player on your team and on your roster that is your intention with your team. Because the moment you submit it to us, we will reach out to everybody involved to say, hey, we've been notified. Is this true or not? So just please keep that in mind. All right. Next question. The question was asked, are new players tied to a team after one event at all?
So new players shouldn't be tied to a team after one event. Okay. So in the past, this again goes to what we've done in the past and why that led us to where we are now. But basically in the past, it took 2 events for a team to become a circuit team. Now we leave that up to several pieces. It's 1 event to become a circuit team. What does the captain say that the intention of the team is? And what does the final roster look like? If the captain says, yes, we're going to be a circuit team, and their roster shows that they are a circuit team, meaning they basically have 20 players on their roster where an availables team can only have 15, that's clear cut for us. Both pieces are verified that you want to be a circuit team. So we set it up that way that teams become a circuit team after 1 event, simply so we have only 2 types of classifications, circuit teams and availables teams. We no longer have a new team category. We no longer have I can't remember what we used to call it, like a pending circuit team category. So we're just trying to keep it as simple as we can.
All right. The next question. How does Kickball365 plan to validate where a player resides in their region that they claim?
Well, there are a number of data points on every player in the system. So that makes it very easy to verify some of this. And then the second piece is, especially with the pet tool, all rosters are public. And our players since day one, this goes back to 2010-11, they've never been shy about emailing in something that looks fishy. So keep it up.
We definitely appreciate that feedback.
We're working on pet to make it even more accurate. So
yes. Thank you, Tom, again, if you're watching as I'm texting you pre-show. The next question we had come in, without citing upward transfers, can you explain how having a player from another part of the country is inherently bad for the game?
Okay, so this answer can get a little dicey, but basically having players outside of from another part of a country is not bad in limited quantities. It's devastating in the larger group mentality when players are moving in packs and other teams are mimicking players moving in packs. So basically it just comes down to cannibalization and consolidation. So I have a goofy example here, but it's very, very realistic as to what happened, call it the 2014 to 2016 timeframe. But you start with 2 cities, 2 teams. Each team's got 20 players, so that's 40 players total. That's great. The second option is you have 2 different cities, 1 team. Each city has players from both. So option 2 only has 20 players. Option 1 has 40 players. So eventually that 1 team of 20 will strategically merge with another similar group who has decided to make themselves a part of a team from another part of the country. And pretty soon, after 2 years, what started as 80 different players across 4 different cities now becomes a group of 20 across 4 different cities. And then you have 60 people who are left on the sidelines that don't have any pieces left over to build a team. And they're not finding each other. They're not doing anything. They're just quitting entirely. So that's the trend that we saw that happen during that time frame. It really took off in the late 2013, early 2014 time frame. And so that's unfortunately one of the side effects of regionalization, but we do think that it's fine in limited quantities.
Agreed. All right. Next question. Why isn't there more transparency when players submit a transfer request to the rules committee for approval?
So with the rules committee, there's a lot of downtime. It's just a slow process. So I'll run everybody through it so they know. But sorry to cut you off, but it actually probably would be beneficial just to explain the role of the rules committee and overall who sits on it. Are they volunteers, or their staff, or are they us? Yeah. So the rules committee is I think it's 12 people, but we try to get a wide, diverse group. So we want some co-ed players. We want some women's players. We want some pro refs. And then we also have a couple of our internal staff that, that even includes myself. But it's usually like 3 of this, 3 of that, 3 of that. And that's how we get to 12. So the rules committee is a completely voluntary position. Nobody's required. Nobody's paid to do it. So these are just dedicated kickball people who love the sport, want to see it grow, and spend a lot of time behind the scenes dissecting what rules, nuances, any issues that come up, and and now player moves and transfers of that sort. So when a player emails in, we kind of like to give a guidance. It does take a couple weeks to try to get an answer, but that's because we have to basically gather statements a lot of times. So if you want to transfer from team A to team B, we're going to ask the captain of your old team, okay, what's up? Do you approve this? We're going to ask the captain of the B team, do you want to accept this person? Some things like mergers, there's a lot more statements that need to be compiled and involved. And these all don't come in overnight. So from there, the rules committee does get busy at times. So sometimes there is a queue. Sometimes there might be 5 or 6 things that they need to discuss. We try to give them no more than 2 things at a time to be discussing, just so they don't get overwhelmed and inundated. So sometimes there is a little bit of downtime of sitting in the queue. And then there's anywhere from half a day to a full week that it can take for a discussion to take place. It just depends on the topic. So sometimes we've been as quick as getting on very simple type of requests, getting things back within less than 24 hours. That's kind of rare, but it happens. Other times it can take up to a full month, so it totally depends. But as far as like, why isn't there more transparency? There's 2 pieces of the transparency. Like if you have a question, you want an update on your case, feel free to email in. But otherwise, if one of us is replying back about your case, like we try to be very clear, here's what the anticipated time frame might be. So, we're not going to give daily updates. We just don't have personnel to do that. But just know that once you email it in, it's the process is already starting.
Yeah. And we are changing it this year, as noted in the rule changes for 2018. A lot of folks in the past, I should say, your requests were simply email it in, and we would spend time and resources to basically say, okay, answer the following questions. So lessons learned, and we're trying to simplify for the players as well as not just for the staff and the rules committee, but we've basically publicly stated that we're going to be setting up when the new rules committee is in place, which is for 2018, when the structure is in place to submit a formal request, we'll have that link available as soon as we get it up, and the rules committee for 2018 in place. It'll have the set questions that we need you to respond. Is this a team transfer? Or is this a merger? Okay, who's the captain of team A? Who's the captain of team B? Provide us with a statement from A and B. All these things will kind of be, pre-positioned so you can populate this information to shrink that time frame. So if you're concerned that this is going to take too much time, we'll ask those questions right up front, because we've been doing this for a number of years, and these are the standard questions we always ask. So if you're watching this and reading the blog post and trying to figure out when can I submit X, please be patient. We need the news rule committee to be in place, and then also we need the form to be up. Jimmy, you had something to add?
Yeah, just to touch on, the transparency aspect of things, a couple of reasons why, ultimate decisions aren't made more public are to protect some of the information that goes into these requests. It's not always, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, it's not always everybody's business. So we're not trying to just put transfer requests out there for everybody to see. And then also, to somewhat protect the people voting on it, the rules committee, so that they can, somehow avoid lobbying and things like that,
Agreed.
Or any kind of, social, discourse from other people or whatever, so, there's things we don't want out there. So.
Agreed. 100% agreed. And actually on that point, a lot of folks who use tools to figure out where players are and possible opportunities to recruit or whatnot, we introduced the player eligibility tool, PET, in early 2017. So the question to you, Tim, is when is PET going to get updated?
Well, based on your text messages soon.
Very soon, hopefully.
Yeah, so one of our pro refs, Tom, is doing a lot of the coding and developing for us, so I can't thank him enough. But as with everything kickball related, sometimes personal life, work life, things happen, so it's easy to get behind on a few things. He's doing a lot of this in his part-time because he's a very passionate guy, loves kickball, wants to see, the sport succeed. So the other thing is Pet's always going to be a constant work in progress because anytime league apps, our registration system updates something, it's going to impact the data on our end, and there's going to be work that needs to be done. So we're doing a little bit of catch up between some of the recent updates as well as just getting it prepped for going into next year so everything can be accurate.
That is true, and we're working with Tom, and he's a phenomenal developer. We appreciate his support to the company. We'll be updating PET to reflect the new categories, new players that are exempt, the out-of-region folks, those that are ineligible. All these tools and updates will be made public. The rosters in PET now are up to the 15th of December of this year. So if you're recruiting for availables teams, definitely look to PET. It's not going to show you team rankings. It's not going to show you team standings. Please refer to those resources so you can kind of see where these players are. We will look to increase the data that's presented through PET over the next couple of weeks, but definitely please check it out. We spent a lot of time building it. We hope to goodness sake that you guys use it to your advantage. The next question, we've only got 4 questions left. Tim, why are we not starting tournaments early? We get this question a lot. I know we both do. What do you have to say about that?
So we always consider starting earlier. It comes down to a couple things. Some parks won't let games start before a certain time. Sometimes that's 8, 9 a.m. Other parks, anything after 6 is okay. But some parks won't let anybody in, including staff, before a certain time. Sometimes that is 8 a.m. and we sneak in anyways, but a lot of times that's usually 6 or 7 a.m. Even when we have a 9 a.m. start time, the people that you see here on this screen, we're there at the park no later than 7 a.m., even just for a small tournament. Sometimes if there's only 2 of us there, we're there at 6:30. So we need ample time to set up, throw bases down, get HQ all set up so everyone can sign in. We can have our ref meeting, captain meeting, etc. So that's basically what it comes down to is park limitations. So for the sake of just trying to keep things as consistent as possible, 9 a.m. is just kind of like our magic time. When I go just touch on consistency for a second, if you remember, everybody remembers a couple years ago, our women's start times for those tournaments were across the board. Some started at 9 a.m., some started as late as noon. We heard feedback and people wanted it to be more consistent so they can plan their day and travel arrangements, etc. So that's another reason. The more consistency we have, the more people, don't have to go look for these details everywhere. It's not different in every city. But where possible, especially for some of the bigger tournaments, if park will let us in, we're definitely considering starting early, even if it's just a half hour or an hour.
Agreed. All right, the next question. What is Kickball365 doing to promote growth themselves? What have we done as a company in the last year to change how we're trying to attract those who are unaware of what our brand is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know we've done a few things in the past, most notably like the Rookie Team Challenge. Got a lot of good feedback from that. For those who don't know, that we used to issue a challenge if you can come in as an all-rookie team and win an event. Basically becomes like Circuit Cup money, like 10 grand. We saw about 20 teams with that. It was pretty good. We have a 5-digit online marketing budget, so we're constantly reaching out to people in the digital world. It's not like competitive kickballers in all these cities just hang out in clusters. So you got to kind of single them out and weed them out online. But we definitely have a pretty sizable budget for that, and we definitely utilize it.
Yeah, and at the same time, you'll notice behind me this logo, not my logo. This is Brickford's logo. Kickball stuff. We're kind of always surprised to see people buying kickballs. Just to kind of point out, Kickball stuff does sell a lot of kickballs. But Brick, for those who are new and, trying to find kickball in general, what are you seeing hitting your website? And then also for teams that are building their next design or their next kickball jersey or t-shirt or swag or whatever, what would you have to say to them as, things to do and, stuff to hand out? Because we actually have seen a lot of teams create their own individual swag, which I'm fascinated by. But what are you seeing teams do now to kind of, recruit locally, recruit at the college level, recruit at their neighborhood kickball league?
Sorry, I was actually cut off for the first half of what were you saying. Can you kind of summarize real quick?
Just what are teams doing as far as recruitment locally with, gear they're buying from kickball stuff and kickballs they're buying through the website? What are you seeing teams do to kind of, up their game with as far as swag goes?
I think you kind of see a couple posts on the Circuit Kickball Talk that kind of mention it, but there were quite a few of the Mile High Club players and fans decked out in their gear. Same with Dope, same with Unleashed. One thing that we do offer is the team store, which allows and create designs based on certain apparel and market it to everybody out there, because everybody sees all this awesome gear, all this awesome designs that teams and players come up with, and they want to wear it and they want to support their friends, whether it be at tournaments or back home. I admittedly have a Mile High Club shirt and I wear it quite a bit, and I get a lot of looks, and they say, "Oh, that's an awesome shirt." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And then I look at it and I realize, oh, it's actually referring to Mile High Club, not necessarily. People don't think of it as kickball, and so that it's an actual topic. I wore my Kickball365 hoodie out to Lowe's this past weekend, and one of the girls that was there, the cashier, was actually a player that plays on All In, right around the corner. Right around the corner from me, and we started talking about their women's competitive league and stuff like that. So, all this swag and gear and stuff like that, it's a great conversation topic. The designs that the artists are coming out with are phenomenal. It being a conversation topic that people can kind of get into is I would say the biggest benefit that I've seen.
Yeah, and I agreed and echo your point, and a lot of the feedback we got from folks for the out of region focus heavily on the new player exemption that we've basically updated to say that, yes, if you are a new player, you are exempt from that out of region cap. So again, refer to the blog post soon. We'll have an update just so you have the updated language for the changes for 2018. Last question, Tim, from Facebook. A lot of folks want to know, what are we doing to speed up gameplay? We did make the change this year that elimination games would no longer have a 60-minute cap. That cap is now 65 minutes. No difference in innings, no difference in circuit overtime rules for the most part. What have you heard? There's no changes that have been made, but it has been a question that comes up a lot. What have you kind of heard is like the three things that folks keep asking us and the rules committee to consider for a rule change? And I'm asking you this not to make this is where the company's going, but just to throw it out there of three critical things that we're actually considering now, a couple years now, that we haven't pulled the trigger on, but just to throw it out there so folks can talk about it.
Yeah, so this comes up every year when the rules committee discusses changes for the following year. There's a couple things. It started last year with moving to a 4-4 pitch count. I think that definitely sped things up. There's always talks about going to 3-3. Done that a couple times before in some games. It's actually really fun. It definitely speeds it up. Another thing is potentially, instituting some sort of pitch clock, whether officially or unofficially, where a ref can issue, balls and strikes for unnecessary delays. Too many overcoaching the kicker, too many people bouncing the ball and throwing it around the infield between innings. Like, just, get the game going. So that's one thing. Another one could be even as far as like reducing the amount of male involvement, whether it's each team can have up to only one male involved with the team in some capacity, or, even zero. A lot of people may not even remember before we started doing women's events. There was one half of the entire country that did it, and the males weren't even allowed to be on the field. So they weren't even allowed to be in the tent. I'm looking specifically to the LA market. So, I mean, it's definitely doable. But those are all things that definitely get discussed and considered every year.
Yeah. I know the conversation of once you enter the kicker's box, you cannot leave said kicker's box. So a lot of teams will see the first pitch and then pull their kicker out, have a conversation, put them back in, see the second pitch, bring their kicker out, bring them back in. And a lot of the rules committee members, including myself, have kind of opted that once you're in, you're engaged. You cannot leave that box. You can manipulate that by, walking up to the kicker's box to have the conversation. But as someone who edits a number of videos, what is the one thing you think that if everyone kind of just took notice that if we just spit up this one part of the game, what would be the one thing you would suggest?
Oh, hands down, the biggest time waster is walking back to the kicker's box after a foul ball. So if somebody kicks a ball somewhere, they run all the way through first base. By the time they stop, they're 90-plus feet away from home plate, and they walk back. That's the number one thing, because that walk back is 20-plus seconds every single time, and that's without a coach stepping in to, hey, do what you just did again. Okay. So you start adding the coach involvement there. It becomes almost could be up to 45 seconds or a minute between pitches. That
does add up.
For sure.
That's very cool. Well, hey, Tim, I appreciate Jimmy and Brick. I want to turn to you guys for any last-minute updates, questions, feedback, observations. You guys have been heavily involved in the Circuit Kickball Talk conversations as well as the internal conversations that we've had as a company. Jimmy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, in terms of schedule building, it was something I was thinking about since that was asked earlier in terms of when the schedule will get completely locked down. One of the challenges we have as a team is we try to get into a few new markets every year, to change up the experiences. But keep in mind that brings a whole new set of challenges in terms of who we communicate with, which parks you can go to Google Earth and look at a field, but, being able to determine what condition the field is in, what facilities, there are there for people to use, all the things that go into an event. It's a whole new challenge. So things like Chicago, even West Palm, because there hadn't been a circuit event in West Palm specifically, that's why there are sometimes delays in building a schedule like that. And then in terms of things to speed up gameplay, if some of these changes aren't successful in 2018, I'll be hosting a backstop class. Help backstops, effectively speed the game up by making good throws back to the pitcher and things like that.
Very cool. All right, Brick.
Yeah, no, just to kind of echo what Jimmy said, as far as the tournaments go, one thing that we always, I guess, have built the circuit on in years past has been input and participation with local players in maybe a region or a location where we haven't had a tournament before. So I can, suggest if you are from a location where we are hosting a new tournament, feel free to reach out to one of us in the event team. If you have suggestions, if you have connections, if you have bars or restaurants or places that want to host events or sponsor things, we're all ears when it comes to that stuff. Some of our best events and some of our best connections have been made from circuit players. So feel free. We are all ears when it comes to ideas that you may have. And again, with questions you may have with the rules, a lot of this stuff is confusing. Trust me, it makes my head hurt. I'll be the first to tell you to email info@kickball365.com if it's something that I do not want to have anything to do with. But for the most part, and I think a lot of you would agree with this, I'm the first person who's going to listen and try to help you make the best of some of these new rules, because I'm not that necessarily there's a loophole out there, but if there's a way that you can understand it to where it makes sense and can benefit your team, or you can actually survive through this rule rather than think it's going to kill your team or be a deterrent. Again, I suggest you reach out to all of us, me, Jimmy, Tim. Admin, I don't think does the social media thing, so don't reach out to him. Let him have his family and do all that stuff. But for real, I mean, we're there for you guys. I hope that this is a great step that a lot of you see as us listening to feedback that's coming in and trying to do the right thing, because we're all in it to make this game as best as possible. A lot of us have made a lot of really good friends, a lot of good connections. And so our main goal is to see this continue and be there in the future for the people that are coming up behind you. So, we've got everybody's best interest in mind. So if you have any suggestions, like I said, feel free to give it to us. And we're going to do the best that we can to make this the best type of kickball that is out there. So that's the last thing I'll kind of leave you with.
That was perfect. Tim?
You
good?
I don't have anything else to really follow up on.
Perfect. Yeah, you did a phenomenal job answering our questions. And to Brick's point, most of the time now, I've been doing this since 2010. I've basically become a lurker when it comes to social media postings. Please don't send me a direct message on Facebook. I'm going to ask you to email the company. That's the proper way to do it, not to engage me on my personal Facebook account. We're doing this with the betterment of the circuit at heart. That's what we want to focus on. We want to create that professional structure where we have professional kickball teams across the country, going, we want to be where kickballers go to compete. That is our mission statement, so to speak. It's the marketing slogan you're going to see on a lot of stuff in 2018 because it's straight to the point. That is what we want to become. Now, that's not just about competition. We're picking phenomenal cities to have a travel vacation experience, to have a blast competing at, but also, going to see a new city. If you've never been to West Palm, if you've never been to Chicago, if you've never been to Denver or the other 12 plus cities that we've got on our schedule, we want you to experience that, not just on Saturday or Sunday, but Thursday night with the bar crawl, Friday with the meet and greet, Saturday, yes, compete to your greatest capacity and have a hell of a game, but please don't skip out on the social party. That's the whole point of this, is to get out there, like Brick said, to make those connections, to make those friends that will last you a lifetime. And I guarantee you, some of these folks that you meet, you would have never thought you'd meet them playing kickball. I met my wife playing kickball. I know a number of you have met your significant others playing the sport or best friends. Like, take advantage of the opportunity. We're trying to create something that you enjoy, and we definitely appreciate any and all feedback you got, positive, negative. We're going to listen to it. You might not like the response. We might not like the response, but we're going to consider it. And regardless of how extreme the feedback might be, we do take it into consideration. So we appreciate you watching the show, the podcast. We appreciate you submitting feedback through Facebook. Again, we're here for you. If you got questions, email us at info@Kickball365. I noticed some of you, Chad and Mark, were in the chat. We appreciate your questions. I'll refer to the blog post so you can see the exact language. And we appreciate your time. Guys, good luck. Thank you for joining me, team. We'll talk to you soon.